Hello, welcome to the Trews. Today we're doing an obituary to Robin Williams. We just heard the news of his sad death. It's confusing, isn't it? Because, why am I confused? I mean, in a way, the story of like a famous person committing suicide or a death brought about somewhat by their own, behaviour. It's kind of, it exists, don't it, for us as a concept. Marilyn Monroe, or recently Philip Seymour Hoffman with the drugs, and Winehouse. It's kind of exists, and so I always sort of wonder what is it the particularity that defines the sadness that you feel in each case. And I reckon with Robin Williams, there's a nostalgia, isn't there? Like, because the age that we are now, people in their 30s and 40s and maybe a bit younger, like, will watch stuff like Mork and Mindy and Mrs. Doubtfire. And so there's this sort of a nostalgic connection to our childhood, and of course that he was a person that we associate with a kind of near hysterical laughter and humour. When I think of him, I think, like, the sort of the word genius is obviously bandied about a lot, but I think when the word genius makes sense to me is when you don't understand where something is coming from. When you can't, well, of course he spent 10 years in comedy school and he refined his techniques. Like Robin Williams, it looked like he didn't even really know what he was doing, like it was just this vessel for this weird, vibrating, ludic, joyous light, pan-like craziness. Like he was someone that speaks that quickly and thinks that quickly and is that full of mirth, and it's so childlike, it seems sort of unrefined. And so I suppose there's a real beauty and relief in it. It seems like that proper humour, disruptive and chaotic, and we don't know where it comes from. I mean, I like sort of super smart comedians too, like, sort of I love the thick of it, or Yes Minister, or Lenny Bruce, but those comedians we think, oh my god, this guy's just like a lunatic child. There's something very, very sort of charming and wonderful. Of course, like he's a man that suffered his whole life with addiction issues as well, isn't he? And for me, the corollary between addiction and mental illness is sort of an absolute one, that addiction is a mental illness, and people with substance misuse issues have, I think, uniformly, always, absolutely got mental health issues, and often characterised by the kind of mania that he exemplified and was the sort of almost apotheosis of, the absolute realisation of, like, oh my god, of course you'd pay a high price for that Icarus-like ability for mad, mercurial, manic, high-paced laughter. Of course, just in this sort of economy of consciousness, there would have to be some point where you go home and sit all gloomy and lost and terribly alone, that it would create some deficit to have access to that degree of mania. The other thing is that Robin Williams was 63 years old, and you think that kind of by that age, you think you've resolved the kind of problems that cause people to commit suicide. The idea that you could get to 63 years old, be married, have children, successful career, seems like you would have come to terms with yourself. So what must that have been like, that private, lonely, mournful sort of space that he found himself in when, like, I suppose, like when anyone you know, and by virtue of being famous is a person that we all know, commits suicide, you think, oh no, if only they'd known. It's like, oh no, Robin Williams. Like, almost like anyone you could tap on the shoulder in the street would have gone, oh no, don't do that, mate, you're really, really lovely. But now, as eventually for everyone, that's no longer a possibility. I was thinking that before, a minute ago, that there must be something wrong with the world if the world can't accommodate Robin Williams. It almost seems like, like a sort of a cold, cynical reading of it is like, well, people are people, and people get depressed and have drug problems and commit suicide, but doesn't it feel like oddly, because it's happening at the same time as, oh, we're going to bomb Iraq again, and problems in Israel and Palestine. It seems like, oh god, the world's all mad. Oh, Robin Williams killed him. Oh Jesus, it's sort of like this sort of slew of broken, mismanaged, malfunctioning malady all about us. It seems sort of connected. If we can draw anything from it, I think it's that those acts of desperation, suicide, and 34,000 people a year commit suicide, and it's rising. It seems like a canary in a cage of a toxic situation that's broader than what Robin Williams. Why is this happening? Why are great people with successful lives committing suicide? Do you want to ascribe it to just one of those things? Oh, it's just one of those things. Or do you want to risk looking at it for a moment as potentially being indicative of a kind of loss of connection to ourselves, connection to one another, connection to our environment? It seems to me that that is a story that you can take from it, that there's a kind of a sad disconnection, that if someone that's capable of generating so much humour and joy and laughter reaches that point. So it's very sad, and I suppose if as a people, as humanity, we want to take anything from it, perhaps what we can take from it is to remember how precious and special people are, and how vulnerable and fragile people are, no matter how they seem, and not to close ourselves off from one another, and to be present for each other. You know, well, you're right, like that we're here on this little planet in infinite space, a little team of people, and not to encourage stories and ideas that isolate and make us adverse to one another and agitate each other and in conflict with each other, but instead promote stories and ideas that are about our mutual togetherness. If there is any conclusions that can be drawn, and I hope there is, because otherwise we're living in a nihilistic, meaningless space where really, really funny people get so sad they kill themselves. Well, that's the Trews then.
Nose is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the news. If the news was true, I want some Trews. Let's have some Trews.